Hi, and welcome to Kidney Plugged In. On the show today, we welcome three very special guests from Bowser, BC. Bowser is a small community of only about 1,700 residents, but this small community can boast about having a surprisingly high percentage of living kidney donors per capita. And today, you'll meet two of those living donors and a kidney transplant recipient. Together, they share an inspirational story of love, friendship, and community spirit. And you'll hear more about the Kidney Walk campaign taking place in 16 communities across BC and the Yukon this June. So stay with us because it's all next right here on Kidney Plugged In. Bill and Sharon, welcome to Kidney Plugged In.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Barbara, for inviting us.
You're joining us both today from beautiful Bowser, BC.
That's right.
And you both have an incredible story to share with us. I think it began around 2018. You just retired, looking forward to some vacations and having some great time to share, just the two of you. But an incident happened. Can you take us back to there and share with us that story?
In 2018, I retired from the forest industry and had a very good career there and thought it was time to go. So I was lucky enough to be able to walk away from that job. For the first part of the retirement, it was good. We did a few trips here and there, and we like to go to Mexico every year. So I got away to Mexico, and Sharon actually went to Australia. Of course, in 2020, when we just got back, COVID hit. So that kind of shut down all of our travel for about a year, for the year. 2021 came along pretty fast. Actually, we're going on our annual fishing trip up to Nootka Sound, and I hadn't been feeling well for probably a month, maybe more. Sharon would describe it as lazy, but I describe it as tired and lethargic. That's when I first had indications that I had a problem with something. I didn't know it was kidneys at the time. That was in June of 2021.
Bill, you mentioned being lethargic, being really tired, so you went to the doctor. How did that go?
Yeah, I also had a sore on my foot and a swollen ankle, and I went to the doc, my GP, and he thought it was just an infection, and he gave me antibiotics and sent me on my way. But it got worse, and eventually my legs swelled up quite a bit. And July 1st, I guess it was, or June 30th, Sharon insisted that we go to emergency, and emergency was in Comox Hospital, North Island Hospital in Comox. They took me into the emergency room and did all sorts of blood tests on me, and of course discovered that my creatinine levels were sky high, and that's an obvious kidney indicator. So they shipped me by ambulance. They said it was emergency down to Nanaimo, where they have a renal unit there, and that's where the rest of my journey started, in Nanaimo Regional Hospital. First, they gave me a kidney biopsy. They told me what the story was about. My kidneys are basically operating at about 5%. What they should be. They inserted a catheter in my chest and said, "You're going to be on dialysis." And I said, "Well, what does that mean? Can I still go fishing at Nootka?" They just laughed, said, "No, you're not going anywhere." So because of COVID at the hospital, Sharon wasn't even allowed to come up and see me. So I was in isolation at the hospital. I was in there for 5 days. Yeah, it was pretty traumatic.
So how did that change your life?
You know, again, I had no idea about what the treatments even were. I'd heard about dialysis, of course, but no idea that it was 3 days a week, 4 hours at a time. And, you know, you're basically hooked up to a machine that's cleansing your blood and keeping you alive. So that was fairly traumatic for us, for all of us. By the time I got out of the hospital, Sharon said she wouldn't even recognize me. Hadn't had a shave in 5 days, and hadn't had my hair washed or shower either. So I ended up traveling back and forth to Nanaimo, which is about 50 kilometers from Bowser each way, for kidney dialysis 3 days a week for 4 hours at a time, where you read books or you watch something on Netflix or whatever you've got available. Yeah, so that was for about a year and a bit, and then I was transferred up to the community clinic, dialysis clinic in Cumberland. They were fantastic there. So, well, they were fantastic in Nanaimo too, but they just treat you like you're special, and they look after you, and you're getting your blood tested all the time, and they're telling you what you need to stop eating, what you're eating too much of, and it's a big change in your lifestyle. You're basically tethered to dialysis So that means you can't really go anywhere for any length of time. The longest I went away from dialysis was 4 days. And after 4 days, I was feeling pretty sickly.
So how did you feel after dialysis?
Yeah, after dialysis, you feel tired. You know, it's taken a lot out of you. But the next day, you feel pretty good. And by the time your next dialysis treatment comes up, you're starting to feel pretty under the weather, I guess is a way to put it. You're lazy again, and you spend a lot of time just sitting around reading. You're not really active. You don't have a lot of energy. The biggest thing I found was it changes the way food tastes, which is kind of weird, but it does put a different taste on all your food. It's kind of a metallic taste in your mouth, and I explained to me that it was because dialysis takes some of the toxins out of your blood, but it doesn't take it all out, just because of the process, and it leaves a fair bit of toxins in your blood, and that affects the taste of what you're eating. So that diminishes your appetite. Well, Sharon will tell you I lost 50 or 60 pounds over the 2 years. I was down to 152 pounds when I got my transplant.
So how long were you on dialysis for?
It was a 2-year journey on dialysis. So it started in 2021 in about July 1st, and it ended on 2023, June the 6th in the evening when I had my last dialysis.
Bill just mentioned the weight loss he was experiencing. Was that a shock for you to see that happening?
I knew it wasn't my cooking. Yeah, it was one of the shocking things. Because you live with somebody that's losing weight loss gradually, and you can see that there's difference in their shape and the way that their clothes fit and what clothes don't fit anymore. It's when you haven't seen people, or people haven't seen you for a while, and you look at their face and they're trying to take in what his structure looks. Bill's 6'3". He was frail.
Kidney disease doesn't just affect the person living with kidney disease, but it affects the whole family. Sharon, when Bill was on dialysis, did you become the caregiver? How did that change the family dynamic?
Well, the running joke in our family is that I'm not a nurse. You have to step into the role. And we were fortunate with the dialysis that Bill could drive himself. I was still working for a year. He was able, energetically and focus-wise, he was able to drive to the clinic, which was like 35 minutes away, to have dialysis and come home. A lot of patients that Bill has talked to, they were dropped off, or the person stayed with them. I couldn't stay with him during COVID. In fact, I never saw the inside of the dialysis unit.
So Bill, we were just talking about the fact that you had been placed on dialysis. And I'm just wondering, how long into the process was it before you and your nephrologist began talking about the possibility of a transplant?
Well, it happened fairly early in the process, probably in the first couple of days when we found out the extent of the kidney damage. And my reaction was like, I'm on dialysis now, so how long is that going to last before my kidneys are fixed? And the nephrologist said, well, it's not going to fix your kidneys. It's just going to keep you alive. You need a transplant to be off dialysis.
And Bill, you had mentioned how fortunate you felt that you had a group of people step up and be tested. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I had 5 living donors who were qualified: my wife, my 2 boys, a friend, and my sister-in-law.
So how far into the 2 years that you were on dialysis did your friends and family step up to be tested to be a living donor?
It was about a year into the process. Yeah, because Bill had to be, some hurdles to get over with his health first before he was actually declared a candidate. But you wrote a letter, encouraged by the kidney people in St. Paul's, to write a letter to family and friends explaining your situation. That was a tough one. That's a big ask, to put it out there that I need a kidney, and would you think about donating to me?
So Sharon, you were actually one of the 5 living donors tested to be a donor match for Bill. Tell us about that process.
It was an interesting process because at the very beginning, they tell you, this is an extensive qualification of your health. And we may find other things that you might not be aware of at this time, which may disqualify you and then send you on another path in your health journey. I thought, well, actually, I looked at that as an opportunity. I've been very healthy all my life. Extra testing at my age, I was 66 at the time. That won't hurt. And I have to say that the whole process that the kidney group in St. Paul's puts forward makes it very easy, very quick to get all the scans that you need. Involve going to Vancouver for some of the testing.
You were mentioning to me before that actually something happened to interrupt this living donor process.
What happened was I had a reaction to one of the drugs I was on. So it lowered my white blood cell count. So it lowered some of my blood chemistry to the point where I was in a critical situation and I needed a transfusion. I got a transfusion at Comox Hospital, and that transfusion changed the antibodies in my blood. So it knocked all of my 5 living donors off the list. They were no longer compatible. So that was a real shock to the system. On top of that, at about the same time, I had prostate cancer. I had to go through that process where I had a prostate operation, and that delayed my transplant process and availability. So that was all happening about 1 year into the process. So it took me another year before I was able to get the transplant.
I'm sorry to hear that. How did that make you feel?
Yeah, it was a major disappointment. Put me in a space of thinking that, well, it's going to come eventually, but I don't want to get my hopes up. Because when you have 5 potential donors, you think, okay, it's going to work here.
And the conversation in our family when we were all compatible with Bill was who was going to get the opportunity to do it. My boys were very clear that, Mom, you're going to have to take care of Dad. So it's going to be between them to decide who's going to do it. And of course, we also had Bill's friend who was there at the plate also, and my sister. When you make a choice to become a donor, is that the counseling facilities that are available to you at St. Paul's, they're with you every step of the way, asking you, is this the right decision? Do you know what it's going to be like when your husband has a transplant? So they're checking your emotional and your mental health.
So the blood transfusion actually changed things so that all 5 matches were no longer compatible. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Part of that, though, is that because I had stepped up to be a donor, I could enter into the paired program, where Bill could enter into the national program.
So that's the paired exchange program. Sharon, did you enter into the paired exchange program?
Well, I was entered into that program, but Bill's health was still going on a bit of a roller coaster. I don't think he became a candidate. I think that runs every 3 months or 4 months.
I missed a couple.
He missed a couple of them.
So at this point in the conversation, we're going to introduce somebody very special and very important to the conversation. And it's someone that we refer to as a kidney hero because she was your living donor match who donated her kidney to you. And I sort of feel that there should be a drum roll leading up to welcoming Kathy to the show. Kathy, welcome to Plugged In.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
So Kathy, at one point, did you consider being a living donor and donating a kidney to Bill?
Well, as Sharon said, we have an amazing group of friends in our little small community of Bowser. And so when this happened to Bill and Sharon, all of us in the group were sort of following the journey, hearing the story, hearing the ups and downs, seeing Bill go from this vibrant 6'3", healthy, retired, happy guy to just almost a shadow of himself. And so we knew, all of us knew, that they had these 5 great donors and we were all excited. And then, we also heard the downside too. All of a sudden, his blood transfusion was required and he wasn't a match anymore. And so I just thought, well, why don't I get tested? It was a really easy decision for me. There was just, why not go through the process? If I'm a match, I have an extra kidney, I'm healthy, he might as well have it. It was almost as simple as that. when I was chatting with Sharon and Bill, they connected me up with the St. Paul program. So I got the emails, the phone numbers to the donor team. And so I just reached out to them, and it was a pretty detailed process, an interview. You fill out a really long questionnaire. And then they keep the donor team quite separate from the recipient team for confidentiality reasons, and to make sure that they're taking care of my health as well as my function okay. So you start that process to get tested. And as I said, they keep it quite separate. But because of our friendship and our community, I was staying in very close contact with Sharon and Bill and keeping them updated. Because the first step is just to find out, is my blood a match? If it's not, you don't even need to go any further. But am I a match? Do my antibodies work with Bill? So as I was getting tested, I was very much updating Sharon and Bill, and they were updating me on how Bill was doing through his various tests, because he still had a few hurdles that he had to jump. Bill was pretty fragile. He was in pretty fragile health. And it was becoming pretty clear to all of us that he needed this sooner rather than later. So we found out I was a blood match, and it was like, great, let's get the next round of testing done. When can I set up the various tests in Vancouver?
So Kathy, you found out that you were a donor match for Bill. There must have been a moment where you had the opportunity to share that exciting news with Bill and Sharon. How did you tell them that good news?
Well, I think the night I remember is I think I finally heard from either the nephrologist or the surgeon to say, yep, you're good, your kidney function's good, you can do it. And so I was pretty excited. And I think we were in Qualicum out for dinner, and I called Sharon and Bill and said, what are you guys up to tonight? They're like, I don't know, we're just sitting here doing whatever, because Bill didn't have a lot of energy at that point. So we stopped by their place. We told them in person. And then I think we actually started to pick surgery dates. It was like, okay, get your calendar out, get my calendar out. What works for you guys? What works for us? And at least that's my memory of it. So
Kathy said all along, I just have this feeling this is going to work. Like right from the time she decided, and we just, okay.
She didn't tell you that she flew from California, where she was staying, to get some of the testing done. Part of her holidays were in California. But wow. It was amazing. It was unbelievable.
Wow, that is a dedicated living donor, Kathy, coming all the way up from California for some of the testing. So for many of our viewers, they don't know what actually happens during that transplant process when there's a living donor donating a kidney to the recipient on the same day. Can you walk us through how that takes place?
We were at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver, and it started off early in the morning for me. I think Kathy was maybe about the same time, and the worst part about the whole process was the COVID test where they touch your brain.
I knew you were going to say that, Bill. I think that was the worst part for both of us.
Yeah. So the day before, actually, I had my last dialysis treatment in Vancouver at St. Paul's. The nephrologist came in and said, this is your last one. Tomorrow you won't need it anymore. I'm thinking, wow. I thought I'd have to maybe be on dialysis for a month, and the kidney would take some time to start up. But for me, it was early morning down to St. Paul's and into the surgical unit there. And they look after you and they wheel you into the operating room, and you wake up in the recovery. And the first thing you say is everything okay? Is Kathy okay? And next thing you say is, I want a popsicle. So I wouldn't say it was painless, but it was pretty cool, actually. The doctor Dr. Mason in St. Paul's the next day, he said, you got a great, wonderful kidney. It's going to be super, and you're going to be good.
And it worked overtime.
Yeah, I was peeing 16 liters a day.
Wow.
So they were putting my fluid in through IVs, and it was coming right back out again. So yeah, it was working excellent.
Kathy, can you walk us through what it's like to donate from the living donor's perspective?
It was a pretty cool experience, actually. That my surgery was first in the morning, so they take mine out, cool it a little bit, clean it, do whatever they do, and then it goes into Bill in the afternoon. So I had my surgery, I don't know, by 8 o'clock or 8:30, I was under. And so then I woke up and Bill hadn't even had his surgery yet. So when I woke up in recovery, the first thing I do is kind of like, okay, well, how did it go? And they said, yep, it's all good. And Bill's going to head in pretty soon. And they were taking Bill in that afternoon. So I was back in my room, and Bill and Sharon's boys were kind of in with me and my partner. We're all kind of just sitting there waiting to hear about Bill and how he did. And so I think Bill's surgery was done maybe 6 or 6:30 in the afternoon or the evening. And Sharon gets a message that everything went great and the kidney is functioning. They said kind of on overdrive. And so that was just, it was a really cool thing. Then I kind of probably went back to sleep and looked forward to better food in about 4 days. So we've got some pictures pre and post, and I think the smiles on our faces were all pretty authentic at the beginning and at the end, for sure.
So, Kathy, what was your post-recovery like?
I have to say that I really didn't experience any pain. I mean, the pain of course, you've got an incision, so you have to get up carefully, and it's going to take you a little bit to not have the incisional pain, but there wasn't really any pain. There was more some nausea, some discomfort, bloating, lots of bloating until my system kicked back in. But nothing that some walking around and a couple of days of recovery would do.
Bill, how about you? How was your recovery?
I got moved up to recovery, like Kathy said, later in the day. And I think it was the next day I was, same with Kathy, eating the hospital food, but her partner brought me some French fries from McDonald's, which I hadn't had for years. So that was the best part of it. And, I don't think, I think my recovery was easier than Kathy's recovery, just because of the type of surgery I had, where they put the kidney in the front of your abdomen, and it's not so invasive as what the removal is of a kidney, which, surprised me where they put it. Actually, I thought they were going to take one old kidney out and put a new one in, but they don't do that. So I was up and around in the first day and walking up and down the corridors and with my IV trolley with me, and it was great.
So what many people may not realize is that during the living transplant process, they implant another kidney for the transplant recipient, but they remove a kidney from the living donor. So Bill, you have 3 kidneys. Kathy, you have 1. So it's a little different process for you.
Yeah, so because they take out your kidneys and they're fairly deep in your gut or your abdomen, they kind of shift your bowels to get at the kidney. So the biggest thing is just getting your bowels going again. I know it's not the most exciting part of the conversation, but it's really just having to get those going again. So once that started, the movement, walking around, I walked a ton, pop down and, wave at Bill in his room and have a chat. So I did a lot of walking, got out of the hospital pretty quick. I was pretty happy with how fast I got out of the hospital. I think I beat him by a day or 2, and was able to go back to the island. I was doing so well that I could go right back over to the island instead of having to stay in Vancouver for an extra little bit. And then really after that, they tell you it's 6 to 8 weeks before you can resume your normal activities again, and they were just about bang on. I was pretty careful. I did what they said. I am a trail runner. I behaved. I didn't get back on the trail to run until I hit the 8-week mark. But I was walking in our neighborhood as soon as I got home, building up my distance. And it was really a pretty easy recovery period.
And Bill, how was it for you?
We had to stay in Vancouver near St. Paul's for just under 2 months. We stayed a block away from St. Paul's for the first month. And then we're a bit farther away. We did a lot of things around Vancouver that we've never done because it was like a holiday being away.
This transplant story that we've been sharing so far has really been amazing, and not just your personal stories, but also the insight to this small community of Bowser, BC, that has really exemplified what heroism is all about. Because Bill, when you were first looking for a living donor, there were in fact 5 residents from Bowser who stepped up to be tested. And when unfortunately the bottom of that opportunity fell out for you, there was a good friend and resident of Bowser that picked up that baton and helped you with it across the finish line, and you received a kidney transplant. But that's not the end of this story, because Sharon, you actually went through the testing to be a living donor for your husband, Bill. And when that opportunity didn't present itself anymore, you didn't stop there. You actually continued on, and you became an altruistic donor. Gotta tell us about that.
Well, once I had done the testing and knew I had qualified to be a donor, I didn't look back. I knew that I was going to be a donor. For me, like what Kathy said, it was just very simple. Everything's laid out for you, and you make a decision and you do it. We were looking at timelines when I decided to be a donor and Bill had his transplant. And, it was recommended that I didn't do it. Well, Bill was recovering, and to have 2 of us recovering at the same time, and that was a good choice for us. But it was only 3 months difference. The hospital stay for me, I think, was a little bit easier than Kathy's. She gave me a lot of good tips. And so I knew how to enter that part of that phase of it really, nice and smoothly.
So your post-recovery, Sharon, what was that like for the 2 of you as a couple?
Well, you have to know Sharon. She said she's not a nurse and she doesn't like to be nursed. So.
No, it was great. We had our younger son with us too. And so he kept Bill company, and they did things in Vancouver while I was in the hospital. And quick release from the hospital, they never pressure you to leave. The kidney group, the donor nurse, they say, you're the one in charge. If you don't feel like leaving yet, don't leave. And so we stayed an extra 2 nights, I think, in Vancouver, but our hotel room was on the 14th floor, and somebody pulled the fire alarm, and I had to make my way down 14 sets of stairs to the lobby in my dressing gown, wondering if I should actually be doing this. But it was doable.
Bill, as someone who's walked the walk with kidney disease from diagnosis through to a transplant, do you have any words of wisdom that you would share with somebody out there that's perhaps just starting their journey with kidney disease?
I can say the first thing is listen to your wife when she tells you you're sick. Because typical male, I'm like, no, I'm not really sick. I'm just under the weather a little bit. But, I had no idea that kidney disease was such a big issue in the world. You look around the world and you see it everywhere. You see it even in the hospitals in Gaza, where they're dealing with things like no water and no power. Don't ignore some of the symptoms that happen to you, and insist when you go to your GP that they look a little bit closer to what they're seeing physically. That's my words of wisdom, is just take care of yourself and be aware of kidney disease and what can happen, because it can happen pretty fast.
What I'd like to say is, be grateful for your health. Once you're in service to somebody else's life, giving them back their life, your life is totally changed. So when people say, I don't think I could do that, I say, give blood. It changes and it brings back somebody to being normal again also. It saves a life.
Kathy, it seems appropriate to leave the last word to you as someone who saw a friend in need and stepped up. And if there's other people out there that are considering being a living donor, what advice would you have for them?
I just want to kind of emphasize that, you just need to be healthy and acknowledge that you're good to live with one kidney. We sort of have an extra one anyways. So, as long as you're healthy and you make a commitment to after just getting yourself back on track again, it's a short little time out of your life. The transplant teams and the Kidney Foundation will be there to support you every step of the way. They'll walk you through it, so there's not a lot of things to figure out. If you put your name forward and say, hey, I'd like to see if I can help somebody else out, you'll be supported all along the way. And really glad I did it. That seems so understated, but it was a great thing.
If people are reluctant to donate a kidney, there's lots of other ways to approach this. Like even if you sign a organ donation form and have that for when you expire. The point that should be made is that there's lots of other ways to donate organs that don't rely on a live donation.
Sharon and Bill, you're wearing Kidney Walk t-shirts today. Can you tell us about the upcoming Kidney Walk?
Hi, I'm Sharon Waugh.
I'm Bill Waugh.
And I'm Carol, sister of Sharon and sister-in-law to Bill.
And we're members of Team Bowser Shares the Spare.
We chose this team name because my sister and I are living kidney donors, and Bill is a kidney transplant recipient, and we all live in a small community of Bowser.
Team Bowser Shares the Spare will be participating in the Nanaimo Kidney Walk this year, taking place on Sunday, June 2nd at 11 a.m. at the Maffeo Sutton Park, Swayalana Lawn.
In fact, I'm one of the coordinators of this year's Nanaimo Kidney Walk.
We'll be at the Nanaimo Kidney Walk representing Vancouver Central Island. But there are walks taking place at 15 other communities within BC and the Yukon, so you can physically participate in a walk that's closest to you. You can also participate virtually under the virtual walk on the website. You don't have to be a living donor
or a transplant recipient like me to join our team, or to just come out and join us on the Nanaimo Kidney Walk. But you do need to be willing to be ready to have a good time for a very important cause.
And if the Nanaimo Kidney Walk is the closest location to you, please register online in advance and come and join us in the beautiful waterfront Maffeo Sutton Park in Nanaimo. You can also register in person on the day. We can't wait to see you there.
Together we are stronger than kidney disease. Yeah!
Kidney Plugged In wants to hear from you. Join us in June 2024 for a virtual 1-hour focus group. We're looking for individuals who've watched Kidney Plugged In and who'd be able to provide feedback on content that they like and what they would like to see as we build a future direction for content for the TV show. The focus group is part of an evaluation of Kidney Plugged In being conducted by Reichert & Associates, an independent evaluation firm. To register to take part in the Plugged In focus group in June, just scan the QR code on your screen or call 604-558-6883. The living donor stats in Bowser.
Yeah, I think that's actually Sharon who's been talking to me about that.
Yeah, I was staring at Sharon. Okay, I'm going to rephrase that. Okay. Thank you all so much for such an inspirational interview. And looking forward to seeing you again in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thanks, Barbara.